Hey guys, it's Tamara Bartmus with Lightsome Living, and today I am excited to bring to you something that I know my Sanditon friends would love, which is a chart reading on the one and only Theo James. Today is both Theo James's birthday as well as Jane Austen, and I think some of their similarities will be interesting to you. I don't have his birth time, so we won't be diving into specific areas of his life that the planets and the signs influence, but I think we're going to get enough of a overview to understand why we appreciate who he is and also why we love him as Sydney Parker. So let's dive into this, shall we?
All right, let's jump in, guys. So Theo James was born Sunday, December 16th, 1984 in High Wycombe. I think that's how you say it, Wycombe. Sorry to all my British friends who know that I'm American and I don't know how to say some of your city names. But he was born in the Oxford area, I'm assuming, because I've found multiple locations and this is probably the most specific of them in the UK. So, but one of the cool things about Theo James' birthday is that he was born the same day as Jane Austen. So, the actual sun sign would be the same for him and Jane Austen, but his moon sign could actually be different. If he was born around like between midnight and 3 or 4 in the morning, his moon would be Virgo. But because I can, this is for fun, guys, so don't take any of this for like gospel or anything, but because it's sort of cool, Jane Austen was also born with a Libra moon, and so I thought it would be fun to have both him and Jane Austen have the same moon and sun. Now, I don't know Theo James's birth time. If I did, I could give a lot more specifics to how things play out in his chart and different areas of his life. But I think it's sort of nice to not know such public figures' birth time because it allows a certain level of privacy for their own world and not really let people to see all the nuances that is them. So I'm not going to talk about how his chart would play out to the different areas of his life, but we'll keep it to the planets and the signs, and I think we'll get enough fun stuff to remind us why we love him as Sydney Parker in the adaptation from Andrew Davies. And anyway, it's just fun to see these correlations play out in what he brings to the table as the actor for the character. Okay, so let's start with his sun sign. Now, some things that the sun is our person, it's our identity, it's how we shine, it's where we shine, and his sun happens to be in the sign of Sagittarius. And so Sagittarians tend to have, every planet has its own better qualities and its lesser qualities, right? And we can flip in between these all the time. And sometimes we're in more challenging spaces with our natures, and sometimes we're in a better place with our natures, right? It could be like the karma dharma kind of expression, or the light versus the dark, or those kinds of like yin yang things going on. But generally speaking, Sagittarians tend to be more philosophical, right? We know that Theo James studied philosophy in university, which is sort of cool that he was drawn to something that really is part of his nature. He more optimistic, more open-minded, more athletic, outgoing, honest, clairvoyant, and very able to inspire perspective. They see the big picture. They have a big vision. They really think big naturally. Okay, some of it's more like less ideal qualities of Sagittarians can be very impatient, very reckless, very zealous, maybe egocentric, maybe exaggerative, very can get into arguments, right? The need to be right, very self-indulgent or critical of any limits on them or on their life. And I think what I love seeing is that these qualities of maybe the lesser part of a Sagittarian was what he brought to the table, at least for part of Sydney Parker. He was able to bring out that impatient nature, that zealous, egotistic, argumentative, self-indulgent, and critical nature. How he interacted with his brother Tom. He felt like Tom was limiting, Sidney was being limited by Tom's needs. And maybe when he was turned down by Eliza originally, that self-indulgent nature sort of took over and sort of, put him on this path to destruction that he needed to be saved from. Definitely we see him argue and lose his temper, very, maybe somewhat reckless, somewhat impatient. We see all those qualities that are expressed in Sidney Parker, and Theo does a great job bringing those out in that character, and I think he can tap into it because he sort of has that ability innately. More dominant than maybe another character, so he's able to bring that to the screen for us, which we love. We love seeing the transformation that is really driven by the Sidney Parker character, and that transformative quality I think also speaks to a deep part of Theo James's chart that I'll get to in a second. But part of the other thing that's going on with his Sagittarian sun is that it's really close to two other planets. It's close to this purple planet here, the Mercury, and it's close to, see that there's the sun, there's Mercury, and this is called Uranus. And so because they're so close within degrees, they're actually playing out as one together. And so Mercury is the planet that has influence on how we think and how we communicate. And so part of Theo James's personality would be that his natural way of communicating it's really part of his core identity. You can't really take away his voice from his identity. They're very intertwined, as well as his spontaneity that is enhanced by having Uranus really close in there and in Sagittarius. So they all play out together. So let's just talk a little bit more about Mercury. Mercury, how this is going to be expressed in Sagittarius would be typically more fun-loving communication. He loves to be a bit of a clown, more of a sidekick, comedic, likes to play around. But every so often he'll have these surprising words of wisdom, right? He can be blunt. He can be cheerful. He is not opposed to having, different accidents or gaffes that happen. He'll put his foot in his mouth, but people just are so charmed by him overall that they'll work through it and it won't be, an issue. It's not heavy. He's able to sort of laugh through it, over it, and it all works for everybody. That Uranus in Sagittarius will show up as more of that randomness, that ability to have like random advice. Like, where did that wisdom come from? Because you're going to typically see him express himself as more rambunctious and playful. And so when he gets serious and thoughtful, you almost don't expect that depth to him, but he definitely has that. And you'll hear these, he has that potential, and that those words of wisdom will come out and you're like, what? Oh my gosh, I didn't realize that. And so it all plays together. It all sort of works together for him in that way. Another thing that's interesting about his Sagittarian sun is that the planet that rules Sagittarius is Jupiter. So we're going to jump up to Jupiter here, and it happens to be in Capricorn. And Capricorn is the sign that expresses like business, corporations, right? Our reputation, what we'll be known for. And Jupiter is the expander planet. It's like this huge, it means it's going to be huge, okay? And so that he has Jupiter in Capricorn means that his reputation will be known, his business endeavors, his those kinds of things that will have a huge influence and lasting impact, almost a legacy. He has the potential to leave a very large legacy when it comes to how he influences these structures and influence. I mean, it could also be expressed in how he is as a father and what that looks like. His Neptune down here in Capricorn might soften the traditional Capricorn energy that he, can seem as so big, so authoritative. He can as we see him expressed in Sydney Parker in Sanditon, you see that strength, you see that like that authority, that voice, of like, wow, like you pay attention to him on the screen, right? And I think a lot of people are drawn to him for that Capricorn energy. I've talked to other Sanditon friends who have said, I see so much Capricorn in him. And it's because you will. That Jupiter is so magnetic. It's so huge. You're going to see that strong Capricorn energy expressed. But it will be softened a little bit by his Neptune. And I would say that he's very intuitive in how he leads. He actually would be an amazing leader. He's just very inclusive in his leadership, very ethical, very graceful in how he leads, and that Neptune's going to make him more sensitive to people around him. But also, I think as a father figure to his children, that he will have this intuitive nature and how to be a father to them as well, which I think is wonderful, because we have this challenge going on. The ruler of Capricorn is Saturn, and Saturn shows up down here in Scorpio, and Saturn has a lot to do with, it could be father or male figures in our lives, father-like figures in our lives, and that can be a challenge for some. It also can be a studying influence, a mastering, like somebody who really guides them in those things, because it's just so steady, it's so consistent, constant, and so it being in Scorpio might present some deep growth opportunities for him, but Scorpio is again everything that's going to happen in Scorpio is going to influence his career, his business, as well as him feeling like he can be himself. Okay. And so there's this flow going on with his chart overall. One of the things that's interesting about his chart, that's Pluto, which is basically the ruler of Scorpio, is in Scorpio in his chart. And I think this is what his wife has. She's a Scorpio sun with a Gemini moon, I believe. And you can go watch my other Ruth Kearney video breakdown of why we love her as Mrs. Campion. But I think this is one of the reasons that they're drawn to each other, because of this energy. And Scorpio energy is often misunderstood. It's often thought of as a very sexy energy. And it is. I'm not going to say that it's not, but there's so much more to the Scorpio energy. It's so much more under the surface. Most people won't even know all that they're naturally picking up on. They see so much potential struggle, pain. They've seen all the dark things. It can be where we get scared of the dark, or where we face the dark, face our fears. And so there's a potential for that to influence how he builds his reputation and how that shows up in his identity. So the other thing that's interesting about his Scorpio is his south node here. There is a south node and a north node, and they are very opposite each other, 180 degrees opposite. And this is sort of like where we're coming from and where we're going to. It is part of our life path, the lessons that we're learning in this life. And this would show that part of Theo James's lessons is to learn to know himself, and maybe know himself independent of what he was influenced by from his father as a child, like to learn to know himself independent as a person, and then and to trust himself in how he brings that into the world in a physical way, how his insights, his sensitivity, his honesty, all he will create in this life experience things that will help him to build security and stability from him knowing himself. So once he knows himself, then he has the opportunity to find the expression of that and bring it into this world. Anyway, that's just part of the life lesson that he gets to experience. Something that's also cool about his chart is that his Chiron, which is known as the planet of our, sort of like our kryptonite, our greatest weakness, that can become our greatest strength, is in Gemini, and Ruth Kearney has a lot of Gemini energy as well. So she is almost like a mentor-like figure for him in some ways. And if we look to his Libra moon, let's talk a little bit about this. Very typically, it's going to be very pleasant, very polite, very fair. It can, Libra moon can mean that sometimes the person can be indecisive, but they're really drawn to partnerships, to committed relationships. They enjoy art and music. His Juno that's right next to his moon is showing me that he's very committed to his his partnerships. I would assume that he's very dedicated to his wife. That's really, he highly values his marriage. And their own way of being partners in that. I think also the Libra moon, in its natural, like, higher state of being, it can be very companionable, very cooperative, very harmonious, artistic. They can be very persuasive, can be super diplomatic, really able to see all the different angles, and that plays into his philosophy side of his identity, his sun in Sagittarius. Very empathetic, very inclusive. And when he's maybe not in a good space, anybody who has a Libra moon, maybe not in a good space, they can be a little bit pouty. I guess you get your grumpy Sydney there. A little bit judgmental, hypocritical, tending towards people pleasing, maybe a little flaky, indecisive, very distracted or apathetic. And so really part of the opportunity for him is to realize that there's so much value in the partnership. There's so much to gain for him in this life in how he works on his marriage. And I think that's good that he keeps it private, and he and his wife have, lived that way. The health in the partnership will really help him with this Scorpio energy that he has to work through. And again, I think his choice of a partner is influencing the lessons that he needs to be learning in this life, and the mentorship that he needs, the challenges that he needs to overcome for his own personal life experience and growth. A Libra moon can create some codependent relationships. And so learning to manage that, learning to have good boundaries, learning to, not fall into traps of manipulation or being manipulating or being manipulated. That can also create challenges for them. But generally speaking, a Libra moon values their individual emotion. They really value feeling like their emotions are part of the partnership. Like, how they feel matters. I think this Libra moon, again, he shares this with Jane Austen as a significant sign. Of all the signs on the chart, the moon and the sun are probably a couple of the most predominant influences for somebody. And so he has more than most people probably an ability to relate to Jane Austen. His ability to, Jane was very much about, in her novels and within herself, you look at her own life story and you see that she couldn't marry for any reason that wasn't based in mutual love and affection, right? And that was really that line that really means something also to Theo James as a person. I would assume based off of his chart, that kind of partnership really is valued and super, super important. Okay, so I want to highlight a couple things I find interesting. The Mars in Aquarius here, this is going to be shown as like this natural gift for networking, being open to people, being friendly, innovative, taking actions on those kinds of things, and, just a little bit more outgoing that way. But what's cool also is his Venus in Aquarius. So what that means, Venus is like what we see as beautiful, what we value, what we find pleasure in. So you could say in a way that he finds pleasure in the abnormal, in the weird, in the things that impact communities at large. He really likes to help others feel good by treating them as equals and including them. And you can see that in how he has, at least from my perspective, connected to and related to fans, that he has never turned his nose up at anybody. He very much has been kind, but in a more one-on-one environment. He doesn't need to be out in the public eye. He doesn't need that. He doesn't really want that, obviously. And so he but he is definitely values that. And so we see that reflected in Sydney Parker's character, how he is attracted to and drawn to Charlotte Haywood, who is very much just not the normal person in Sanditon. She's a country girl. She walks around with her hair down. She's challenging of the cultural norms. She just is willing to push the limits and push the boundaries and challenge those. And Theo James as a person and Sydney Parker as a character seem to value that value that in another person. And so I see that he's able to tap into some of that within his role as Sydney Parker, pull into that appreciation, that value, that admiration for somebody who's willing to challenge the status quo, like how Charlotte managed and worked with Georgiana and help navigate that whole situation. That was part of that Aquarian energy that was pulling them together as a love interest as well. So I think that's sort of cool to see reflected in his chart. Coming back to my final thoughts of how Theo really is able to bring himself to this character of Sydney Parker. One of the things that I think drew him to the character is his ability to tap into this Pluto in Scorpio energy and the Saturn in Scorpio energy. This energy overall is about transformation. It's about seeing the redemption. It's about being able to see somebody who has struggles or is broken and help be part of that process of the recovery. And so the symbol or the glyph for Pluto is actually the phoenix rising from the ashes, which I think is lovely. And I would hope that it plays into his personal influence on helping this show get a second season and see the redemption of Sydney Parker and the relationship to Charlotte Haywood. I can also see why he's okay with the sadness of this first season ending. And I know that's a bit a hot topic amongst the sisterhood, but that I can see why he's sort of okay with the sadness of it, because the Scorpio energy is really able to hold the sadness different than most people. They're able to be okay with the abnormal and with the sinister, with the darkness, with all the things that most of us are like, but that's not fair and that's not right. It could play out that we don't get a season 2, and that would be horrible. Let's not talk about that. But I would hope that this could play out also in the expression that we do get a season 2, that he actually fights for the redemption of Sydney, and we do get to see that story. But that's just, of course, speculation, right? Another thing that I think is really cool about Theo's chart is that he has what is called a grand air trine going on here. It's these blue lines that make a big triangle, and that's just one of the aspects, patterns happening in his chart. And when I see that, I just anticipate that it's going from Gemini to Aquarius down to Libra and to the planets in them. I anticipate that in his future, he will actually be more involved, probably privately. I don't expect him needing to be seen in the public eye, but he will leave a kind of legacy of influence and of impacting like humanitarian efforts. And I know that he does stuff with people in Greece, and he has been involved in those things. But again, he's not going to be like needing to say, hey, look at me, look at all the cool things I'm doing. But that's going to be part of his own journey of finding meaning and purpose and feeling valued and valuing the efforts to help people maybe in their learning. In their Gemini is, again, learning information. Aquarius is, so it goes Gemini and then Libra and then Aquarius and then back. So transferring that information and making an impact. I could even see him possibly being involved in like schools in third world countries or education in third world countries. And maybe his wife will have more influence on that in the future. Who knows? Obviously, I'm just pulling things together. But I would just, there's a lot of things that happen on somebody's chart, and they get a say in it. They get to say how that's expressed and how they feel it being expressed in their own life. And so this is all just for fun. And please don't, I am not by any means saying this is all 100% accurate of who he is, but it gives me an indication of the potentials within him, and why I personally also appreciate him bringing parts of himself to the character of Sydney Parker, so that we all felt so like drawn into this character, so connected to that character. He did an excellent job of expressing Sydney Parker, and we can see that in just nuanced ways on his chart as a whole. So good job, Theo. Thank you. Just to wrap things up, I do want to share with you, I love to create essential oil blends that sort of reflect the energy of a person. And this, for Theo, I muscle tested an energy blend that is a combination of the sun, moon, and his final dispositor, I guess you could call it, of Pluto in Scorpio. So it has a combination of the Sag energy with the sun, the Libra energy with the moon, and the Scorpio energy with Pluto. And it's 3 different oils. The first is lime oil, which is known as the oil of the zest of life. And if there's anything that Sages in their pure energy are, they are just enthusiastic about life. And they just want to experience it all. They love travel. They love all the adventures. And so lime can really help embrace that, the adventure of life. And sometimes when life gets overwhelming, which Sages can naturally feel overwhelmed because they see so many things in such a big picture, lime can really help clear that congestion, help them feel safe in their within their world, dispel some of the apathy, resignation, and really bring in hope, optimism, joy, courage, just that willingness to be like, okay, life, what do you have for me? And then charge forward. Okay. So that's some of the cool things about lime for his blend. And then the second one is neroli. And neroli is a flower from the bitter orange tree before it forms the fruit of the orange. And it really is, it's called the oil of shared purpose and partnership. And I think this plays into his Libra moon, right? That need for partnership, for balance, for harmony. It really helps bring in the emotions and develop the characteristics of fidelity, empathy, patience, forgiveness, resilience, that helps them build a stronger partnership and relationship. It really helps with the deeper connection, encouraging to face the deep emotional barriers that sometimes you put up walls for, and help bring in more cooperation, more tolerance, more kindness, more perseverance. It helps to, help create a space of acceptance and support for each other as partners, and really help to focus on the beautiful bigger picture, the big tapestry that one is creating when they are married to somebody, or when they're creating a partnership, and find shared purpose in that, shared meaning in that. And that would be neroli. And then the third oil is called Anchor, and it's a steadying blend. So really supportive to people who want to practice trusting their intuition and accepting wisdom that is really waiting for them. It's already in them, they just haven't tapped into it. And that is part of that Scorpio energy, is like I said, learning to know yourself so you can trust yourself. That's that nodal axis that's that nodal axis playing out for them. So this Anchor blend really helps create that, instead of hiding from the things that are hidden within us, it's sort of breaking down the walls instead of putting up the walls because we're scared, helping to learn to trust and find their center instead of rejecting all the things and shutting people out, pushing people away. And one of the core root things of anybody with Scorpio energy is trying to determine if they can trust others. They can trust this environment. They can trust life. They can trust people. And so they push and push and push until they have determined that they're safe. And even then, they'll push them more. And so it definitely can go deep into heavy, dark places. And I think this is what I see potential for in his relationship with Ruth. She has a lot of Scorpio and Gemini energy, and he has a commitment to his Libra moon. And anyway, I find it very interesting. And of course, I don't know the inner workings of their marriage, but I would hope that it's a healthy, happy one that's helping each other grow and become their best selves. And I think it has potential for that at least. But it's definitely, this Anchor blend is a combination of lavender, cedarwood, frankincense, cinnamon, sandalwood, black pepper, and patchouli. It's just that combination that's going to really help break down the barriers so that you can feel like you're grounded and you're steady and you're, able to move forward with life. So that combination, if you guys want to check out those oils, I'll put a link in the description below for you to check them out. There's some beautiful aromas for them for sure. Anyway, I hope you found this interesting and fun. I do hope to do another one for Jane Austen, for, of course, Rose Williams as Charlotte Haywood, for Crystal Clark as Georgiana Lamb. I mean, there's so many great actors in Sanditon. I think it's fun to see how they bring a part of themselves into that role, and that's really what I think makes them shine in this amazing series that needs to have a second season. Part of me wonders if that will happen. Part of me wonders if that will happen at the rebirth, the Phoenix rising from the ashes will happen around February 5th or 6th. I know I'm totally putting this out here, but that's actually the Pluto return of Jane Austen's birth chart, and it just makes me wonder. This is total speculation, so please don't take word for it, but it wouldn't surprise me if something happened in February next year, 2021. So if not sooner, let's hope it's sooner. But thanks, guys. Hopefully I'll come back with some more stuff, and let me know if you liked it. Like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Leave a comment. Let me know what you learned, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.